What is going on, trainers? DrumVillain here, bringing you some more Pokemon Go PvP content, and today we're talking about the Ultra League, which is probably not surprising, you know I love the Ultra League when this thing comes around, and I wanted to talk about Suicune, because Suicune I've always thought had some potential in the Ultra League. Having Snarl as a fast move and bulk, like Suicune does, gives it potential, really. Like, we see bulky legendaries doing fairly well in the Ultra League, and while it's not got quite the same amount of bulk as, let's say, Registeel, it does have comparable bulk to, I would say, to Giratina in this cup, which is quite decent. It just didn't have the charge moves to make much use of that, having Hydro Pump. Ice Beam's nice in this cup because of things like Giratina floating around, and water coverage is nice, but getting all the way to a Hydro Pump is just too big of an ask when there's quite a lot of charge moves flying in, getting spammed at you. But now they've given it Scald, and Scald's one of the best water charge moves in the game right now, with the buffed damage slightly and the ability to drop the opponent's attack. It really can put some serious work in when paired with something like Suicune. I know a lot of people are talking about Poliwrath right now, and that is strong. I do recommend giving it a go if you haven't already. But I wanted to talk about Suicune because I have one built. I have a decent PvP IVs from a shiny from the trade from the raid day when the shiny was first released. And I've been waiting for an excuse to use this thing for a long time. So we're going to jump into it. We're also going to be bringing Escavalier, which I think gives some nice pairing. It does very well against the grass types in general in this cup, especially Venusaurs. Can hold its own against Virizion, especially with the buffed Aerial Ace. It can hit it for double super effective damage. That's really nice. And then we're going to round out with Giratina, just again for a bit of extra coverage on the things that Suicune might struggle with, especially Cresselia, because Grass Knot Cresselia is, you know, I love Cresselia in the Ultra League. It is very, very strong, and that Grass Knot spam is going to start adding up even with the Scald debuff stacking up. That being said, Cresselia isn't a hard loss for Suicune. A lot of water types really struggle because 2 Grass Knots are going to take them out. In Suicune's case, they really have to land 3 Grass Knots. If you've got Raid IVs on your Suicune, they might be going towards Psycho cutting you down after the second Grass Knot if you don't get a Scald debuff on them. For my Suicune in particular, with it having traded IVs, it's got 5 attacks, so it's like best friend traded. Which is probably about as best as you can hope to have. Otherwise, unless you're trading with someone with very low friendship level to get that attack IV really low down, mine can comfortably survive 2 Grass Knots. They have to realistically land 3. And then you've got Scald debuffs as well, which make that even better for you. So you can put a lot more work in than a lot of water types can on Cresselia. So don't be too scared of the matchup. But also, I wouldn't recommend staying in it early on, especially with this team. It's worth trying to get Escavalier or Giratina lined up with it first. Now, I did rearrange this team because initially I was putting Suicune on the lead because, you know, showcase Pokemon, want to put it on the lead, see what it can do in these opening matchups. And a lot of people saved their fire types like Charizard, Skeledirge, Talonflame. They tend to be in the back on a lot of people's teams right now. And that's not where you want your Escavalier to be because you really got to keep that thing away from those fire boys. So I swapped it around because I think every lead I did a set of 5 battles with Suicune on the lead and it lost every single lead. I managed to win 2 of the games, but the leads were really punishing Virizions, Cresselias, I think even an Ampharos, just nasty matchups. So I swapped around Escavalier on the lead, and it's worked really well for me since then. And like I said, a lot of people like to use Charizard's, Talonflame, Skeledirge, even sometimes as safe swaps, which Suicune can punish very nicely. Giratina makes a nice safe swap if you do run into something like Charizard on the lead, just to try and keep Escavalier away from it. I'll give you shield advantage at least so you can put some work in on it towards the end game as well. Plus, you know, end game scenarios, you get shields off of your opponent. Those grass types are not going to want to take ice beams from you either. If you're looking for a comparison on kind of how it plays in the Ultra League, or at least in terms of matchups, I would compare it to Tapu Fini quite a lot, Suicune. There's some key differences though. You're not going to be weak to Tentacruel. That matchup's a little bit better for Suicune than it is for Tapu. You're going to do much better against Nidoqueen if you're seeing many of those. And some of the matchups have some key differences, like the Dragonite matchup. Rather than resisting all the dragon damage and being able to like land a Moonblast, you're going to be able to hit them with Ice Beam to like just one-shot them out of there, which you're going to get to faster, but also you're taking more damage. Giratina's a similar thing, like you can get a couple of Ice Beams off, which you can get to much faster than Tapu can get to Moonblasts. So it adds a little bit more consistency in some matchups and less consistency in others. And one important matchup to think about is Poliwrath. Tapu's going to serve you better against Poliwrath than Suicune is, but also Suicune's not useless against it either. It's quite an even matchup between those two, especially if the Poliwrath isn't running Dynamic Punch. Whereas with Tapu, you've still got Moonblast to hit them for like super effective charge move damage, whereas Suicune, you're just grinding them down with Scald. Now, would I recommend you build a Suicune for the Ultra League right now? It's honestly up to you. There's a lot of very strong water types in Ultra League, to be honest, like Swampert, Greninja, Poliwrath. There's a lot of things that are worth building in the Ultra League water-wise, even Tapu Fini. Like, if you think this Pokemon's going to fit your team build and what you need from it, go for it. But I would prioritize building something like Poliwrath, Greninja, or even Tapu over Suicune if you've got to choose between your resources like that. I already had a Suicune built for Ultra League from like the first couple of seasons ago, Battle League, when I was experimenting really early on. And if you're not in that position, it might not be worthwhile for you. But let's take a look at some matchups. Shout out to the greatest trainer name I've seen this week, Giratina Altered 7. That proper cracked me up at the time when I saw that come up. And we got Warrain lead on the Escavalier. Fantastic lead for us. The main thing we have to worry about with Warrain isn't really keeping Escavalier aligned with it, it's just keeping Giratina aligned away from it. Suicune does just fine in the matchup because the Powder Snows are doing almost nothing to you. The Icicle Spears aren't threatening, and Earthquake doesn't do all that much to you. It does about half, or maybe like 40%, because, again, like we said, Suicune is pretty damn bulky. They're choosing to Stain, which means they're probably weak to Escavalier in the back, kind of sus. So whatever they bring in, they're going to bring in Giratina. It makes me tempted to swap out here and preserve Escav because they've really let on that they don't have two good answers in the back to it. So I'm going to swap out to Suicune because I like safe swapping Suicune into Giratinas because the Snarl doesn't do that much damage, but the Ice Beams are quite threatening and stuff. And we pull out a Cresselia from the back. So that's the other Pokemon that's weak to Escav. We're not running Mega Horn, which does hurt this matchup quite a bit for Escav, but also you still do just fine with Aerial Ace and Drill Run, and I would still recommend running Aerial Ace and Drill Run on Escav because you want the flying damage to help cover grass types a little bit more efficiently. You want that Drill Run to help deal with the steel types and really help put some work in on like other poison types and things like that. Stuff like Tentacruel, if you do end up in that matchup. Those two moves are going to serve you a lot better overall than Mega Horn, and Escav still does okay against Cress. So, now we've got Giratina and Giratina. We've got Escav safe for the Cresselia. This game is pretty much... We need to Shadow Force, though. That is not ideal. We're down a shield as well, so we could be at risk of getting farmed down here, but we should still be able to bring it back. We got the double Dragon Claw. We bring in Escav. We get to a draw run, finish them off, and we should be looking good. We just should at this move, and Cresselia shouldn't be able to finish us off from that point. It is pretty low. It's going to be close. We get to the draw run. This game is pretty much done and dusted. We've still got some health left on the Giratina as well. Potentially Shadow Claw down if needs be, if this does KO us. But it shouldn't. It's just Grass Knot. No worries. Counter down and it's a GG. Okay, straight on into the next matchup. A common lead that you're going to be running into a little bit is Giratina. I recommend you say swap Suicune into Giratina leads. I just don't like swapping Giratina into Giratina. It just feels weird. So I swap into Suicune. And sometimes, like this one, it's going to stay in a little bit. They're probably going to pivot. They probably wanted to soften us up and make sure they can definitely take Switch off of us, but we are going to get an Ice Beam off. This is going to do big damage to Giratina if they let it through. They do. That's great. They're going to swap out into Cresselia. So you can see the opponent's not feeling super confident at Cresselia at dealing with a Suicune. They might not have Grass Knot, to be fair. They might just have Moonblast and Future Sight. It might be there to be a safe swap to pull out like some fire types like Charizard and Talonflame. But we're going to see, because the switch timers are so out of sync, we're going to swap Escavalier back in and just take whatever they're going to throw at us, because no matter what charge move Cresselia has, Escavalier is going to resist it. We double resist Grass Knot, single resist Future Sight and Moonblast, so not too much stress here. We're going to get ahead on energy by quite a big chunk before we start throwing charge moves, and we're probably going to counter down here and try and throw two draw runs at that Giratina, because the Ice Beam has put it close to a drill run range. It'd probably be a drill run. That might be two Aerial Aces, to be honest, we need to land. The opponent realizes this and is going to bring in a different Pokemon. It's going to be a Gramble, actually, which is kind of scary because we've still got Giratina in the back. That's our last super healthy Pokemon, and we might get charmed down here. We get to an Aerial Ace. Are we going to pull a shield out of this Gramble, or is it out of shield? No, we get the last shield. Okay. We bring Suicune in. We've still got two shields, actually. We should be fine. Giratina should be able to It might take a battering though from that Gramble. Giratina swaps in, we're going to swap out. We want to preserve the Suicune to more safely get to a charge move, finish off the Gramble, and the opponent is going to surrender there. Okay, let's talk about a lead I've been seeing quite a lot of in the Ultra League, and that is Dragonite. The nice thing about Escavalier is that steel typing means you're resisting the Dragon Breath damage. Dragon Breath is a pain from Dragonite in the Ultra League, and even though Escavalier is relatively squishy, you can take these things quite well. You can take Dragon Claw as well. If they throw before you throw Aerial Ace, you know it's a Dragon Claw, you know you can take it and no shield it. I shielded up because they actually built up more energy. Could have been a superpower, and superpower is going to hurt Escav. At this point, we're not bothered about shielding up. Again, if it's superpower and takes us out, that's no stress. Turns out it's just the Dragon Claw, and we actually get the counter down with a charge move loaded and minimal farm, so very ideal situation. We can dump this energy into the Cresselia that follows them in. We're going to let them farm us down, just so we can definitely line Giratina up with this Cresselia and get Suicune on whatever is in the back, because we don't want Suicune in against this thing, especially with a few Psycho Cuts worth of energy. We don't want them getting more Grass Knots off than necessary if they are running it. Giratina, we know we can tank at least one Moonblast. The Shadow Claws are going to add up and whatnot. Worth a shield this though, because they're not swapping out. There's a good chance they're not going to do super well against Giratina. In the back, we've got quite a bit of energy as well that we don't want to lose. Go for the Shadow Sneak. Are they going to shield up? They are. We're going to go straight for another one, take them out, see what they've got in the back. Ideally in this situation, I would say you want to swap straight to Suicune and start getting Scald debuffs. But in this matchup, for some reason, I just stay in with Giratina. And it's like, well, they are throwing counters, so they do have to throw energy to take us out. And that's not a bad situation, because at this point now, we don't want to swap in Suicune and just get spammed with the energy and risk them knocking us out. So we're just going to wait for them to throw, then bring in Suicune and just go to a Scald, which we should be able to make pretty comfortably, KO and take the win. They have got Shadow Ball, which is a new move addition for Toxicroak. It is not going to afford them this matchup. You can see there does less than half, because the Suicune's pretty nice bulk. Take them out, take the win, and it's a good game. So in summary, Dragonite, stop in. Right, Virizion, this is why we've got Escav on the lead and not Suicune, really. You just want to go for the Aerial Aces. You want to time your throw-in just to get those extra counters through, because they are going to start adding up. If they've got Sacred Sword, they're just going to hit you pretty hard. You're not going to be able to survive a second one. Once you get an Aerial Ace through, like we do here, do big damage, it's tempting. Like, you can go either way with this. You can either let it go and farm down with Giratina, but a lot of Virizion leads have an answer to Giratina in the back, or you can shield up, farm down, come out with some energy. We choose to preserve Escav and then swap out to Giratina on the Charizard that follows in, hoping that they'd pivot as well, and then we'd get Suicune lined up with this thing. But even though we don't, and we don't have Ancient Power, this isn't a bad matchup. Charizard spamming Dragon Claws, yes, is going to hit you for super effective damage, but Charizard's relatively squishy. This is still an even matchup, even without Ancient Power, and even at a shield disadvantage. Like, it's a pretty level matchup, so we're just going to let this go at this point. Bring in Suicune, I think, to farm down, or maybe Escav will farm down a little bit faster than the Snarl. Yeah, bring in Escav to counter down. Extra energy, see what the opponent is going to choose to do, and it is a Talonflame in the back, so we've definitely still got our Suicune ready to rock. The main thing here is we don't want to take a buffed Brave Bird. Turns out they're running Fly. They're going to bring in Virizion. We just throw a Scald, get them out of there. We're not going to be able to Snarl it down, even though it's very low on health. We don't want to risk having to shield up a Leaf Blade. Talonflame comes back in. Let's spam the Scald. Let's get that attack stat dropped. The main thing here is we wanted the debuff there to feel safer. No shielding, but we don't. We end up shielding a Flame Charge. This is where it starts to get a little bit scary. We're trying to be energy efficient and maximising our turns inside theirs. Another Scald, we need the debuff. We do get it. And we're going to catch on Escav. You saw what we did there. We threw one Snarl, waited a split second, then swapped to Escav to pressure them to actually throw in the moment, just to burn some energy off. We're going to throw the Scald. Is it going to KO? It should. Not quite. One more Snarl. We take them out. We take the win. Sometimes you've got to get a little creative with your catches just to throw Pokemon like Talonflame off. The main advantage you have against things like Talonflame is how slow and predictable Incinerate is for when they're going to throw charge moves. Right. Armoured Mewtwo. This is a rare one because it hasn't been available in a very long time in the Ultra League, but it is quite powerful, having access to Size Strike, Dynamic Punch. I think you can learn Earthquake as well. Some nice hard-hitting moves, even though it's a very defensive Pokemon. You just want to stop him with Escav, really. I would say. It's a bit of an unusual one. You're not going to see too many of these things floating around. Speaking of floating around, Drifblim is going to swap in. We're going to throw an Aerial Ace to soften up and then bring in Suicune, because then even if they debuff us, one Ice Beam should be enough to finish them off. We're probably expecting a Shadow Ball also. Yep, hits with a Shadow Ball, that's fine, does less than half, so they have to land another 2 charge moves at least to take us out. We're going to go straight for the Ice Beam, let it go through, farm them down. Now we can debuff whatever follows in. It's the Mewtwo. This is looking pretty good for us at this point, because we're going to survive this Side Strike, get a Scald off, do a nice big chunk of damage, and potentially debuff them as well. And then we've still got a very healthy Giratina and a pretty healthy Escavalier left to do some work as well. One more Scald for good measure, because they go for the optimistic farm down. Looking very, very strong at this point. We've got a shield advantage as well. We're going to bring in Giratina, because we know Escav is relatively squishy. We don't want to risk taking a dynamic punch. We just want him to throw this energy. We're going to farm down entirely, see what comes in, and it's an opposing Escav. They're going to surrender. Game's a good one. Onward into the next matchup, and we've got another Dragonite on the lead. This is not a Shadow Dragonite, but same plan. Stop in, go for the Aerial Aces if they throw. Before we get at least 7 counters in, we know it's definitely going to be the Dragon Claw. Get the Aerial Ace through, that's looking pretty nice for us. And the opponent's going to attempt to catch, if I remember rightly, after they throw this move. We're going to shield up, could be superpower, it is. They dip, swap to Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini looks like a core breaker, I would say, for this team, but it's not particularly. You can very comfortably handle it with a combination of your team. So we're going to bring in Giratina after hitting him with a draw run to soften it up. And the Shadow Claws, Shadow Sneaks are definitely going to make relatively short work. We're going to shield this up. It's probably the Moonblast, and if it is, we're going to be able to Shadow Claw all the way down and have a ton of energy to spam potentially that Dragonite they're expecting to follow us in. To do it to another move, we're thinking it's Surf. It is the Surf, no stress at all. Dragonite comes in. We've got energy to spam. Dragonite does not want to take these, so we get a shield. They'll probably get, yep, they got that rest of that energy to throw. We can survive this. We got another Dragon Claw to throw. So we're feeling pretty comfortable here. This should take out the Dragonite, and then we can just debuff whatever's left in the back with Suicune. And then between Giratina and Escav, we should be able to mop up pretty comfortably. That shield advantage is not going to be able to give this matchup to Cobalion. And once we get an attack fall on the first Scald, the opponent, I believe, now they're going to throw. I think they're going to test how hard this is going to hit. Don't think it hits as hard as they want it to. And after this goes through, the opponent quits. Remember right? Yeah, they surrender there. GG. That's a big advantage in endgame situations for Suicune as well, is if you've still got it healthy, you can debuff your opponent and they can't clear it if it's their last Pokemon. And that can really make some situations a lot more comfortable for you. Like that Cobalion, maybe with the shield advantage and the right play, could have fiddled its way around, potentially. More probably not. But the debuff really cements it for you and makes it a lot more secure of a situation. This Virizion on this lead is going to shield up, so we're going to shield up. We're going to match, and then potentially we want to just get an Aerial Ace off. We want to get an Aerial Ace through, do that big double super effective damage, take them out, or at least get them low enough. Do we shield up here? No. You know what? Let it go. Let Giratina come in. We've got a shield advantage, and we're thinking with the grass lead, Suicune might be looking pretty good to sweep the end game with that shield advantage. We're just going to go get a ton of energy, because this Virizion has revealed that they do not have Stone Edge, so everything is resisted. We're going to take a bit of a battering, but we just want to get to 100 energy first, just to give us the biggest advantage we can against whatever's in the back. So what's going to follow Virizion in is going to be an Empoleon. Empoleon, historically not a fantastic answer to Giratina. The waterfalls are resisted. We've got Shadow Claw and Shadow Sneak, so we can get round that steel typing as well. So we're just going to go for the spam, see what happens. And this is suspicious, you know. Shield up. Yeah, you bring an Empoleon into a Giratina that's loaded like this, there's a good chance you're weak to Giratina in the back, so worth a shield. We might not even need Suicune for this matchup. What have they got in the back? Finish off the Empoleon. It's an opposing Giratina. Odd choice. I mean, I suppose they didn't want to take a bunch of super effective Dragon Claws, and I guess they didn't know we had Shadow Sneak. They thought maybe we might have had Ancient Power and Dragon Claw, in which case Empoleon would have been looking a little bit better. But now we can bring in Suicune. We can definitely get to at least one Ice Beam, probably 2, and just finish them off, and that's going to be a good game. Like, Ice Beam does hit pretty hard. In fact, at this point, I mean, Scald's not going to take them out. There's no point playing with the matchup. Just go for the Ice Beams, take them out, yeah. GG's. I was curious how hard Scald hits Giratina, but we don't need to know that. You're always going to be throwing Ice Beam at that thing. Trevenant lead. Trevenant's probably one of the worst Pokemon to run into. with this team, I would say, because it core breaks as lead and as backline. So we just stop him with the Escavalier. I let the foul play through because I was expecting a Seed Bomb because he'd only thrown 6 Shadow Claws. I was expecting Seed Bomb and Shadow Ball, so kind of surprising and throws us out a little bit. But you know what? That means in this position where we've they're throwing a charge move here, we let it go. Bring in Giratina, shield up and just farm down all the way and see what they've got in the back. And hopefully we're in a pretty good position once this Trevenant is cleared out of the way. Hopefully it clears the path for Suicune to put some serious work in. Talonflame comes in to our loaded Giratina. So they're making a pretty big call that we don't have Ancient Power, especially when they no shield. That's a big balls call there. Go for the Dragon Claw spam anyway. Pretty nice position. We're assuming they've got Fly and Flame Charge. A lot of Talonflames now are running Fly rather than Brave Bird. It's not as threatening, and we can just go for another Dragon Claw. They're going to let it through. It should KO. If they do, they are going to shield up. So we're going to swap to Suicune to catch, because we're thinking, you know what, they're committed into keeping, you know, they want this Giratina gone, so let's just get in Suicune, preserve some health on Giratina, save the shield, and see what's happening in the back. And it's a Swampert. So Suicune's going to be able to do okay in this matchup. Earthquake, you can survive. 2 Earthquakes are going to take you out, probably, if you've got Raid IVs on your Suicune. If you've got bulkier than that, you can probably just take 2 Earthquakes, and they might even need a Hydro Cannon on top to finish you off, especially if you get that Scald debuff. We're just going to spam Scald at this Swampert, take them out. It's not quite going to KO, but with the attack debuff, Snarl down, game's a good one. There's quite a few matchups where you can take stuff out with 2 Scalds from Suicune, which is very, very nice. And if not, a lot of matchups it's 3 Scalds. Okay, Primarina lead. Awful for us. If they're running Waterfall, it's pretty devastating. Although Giratina can do a lot better against Waterfall, Primarina. So I suppose if they've got Charm, Escavalier you're staying with. If they got Waterfall, then I still think you stay in and just see what they do. But they choose to pivot, which means they're probably certainly running Charm. And they swap into Cobalion, which to me sounds like they're trying to bait out a Giratina. If you're running something Fairy on the lead in Ultra League and you swap into something like Cobalion or Virizion, that's almost certainly there to pull out Giratina. So we're going to gamble that Giratina's got more play in the back, bring in Suicune to take out Cobalion, and then just line up Giratina with whatever's in the back. They are running Charm on this Primarina, so we're going to go for a Scald, see if we get the attack debuff, and then bring in Escavalier to put some more work in. We're going to shield this up because we just don't want to get Giratina stuck getting charmed down by this thing, because Primarina can put some serious work in. We're kind of hoping they let this go through, because Escav's getting low. They do. Fantastic. What's in the back? It's a Charizard. 1 shield apiece. We don't have Ancient Power, which does make this stronger. You've seen this happen a lot. We are getting Giratina lined up with a lot of these Fire Boys, these Charizards, these Talonflames. I still recommend you run Shadow Sneak for this particular lineup, just because you need more courage against Registeel. We're not seeing many Registeels, but they're out there. And you don't want Escav to be your only answer to it, because Suicune's going to get ruined by the Zap Cannons. Plus, it makes your Cresselia matchup stronger. And again, you don't want Escavalier to be your only real answer to that thing. I just think it balances the team a lot better. But we're going to be able to take out this Charizard with the Dragon Claws all the same. It's going to be a GG, and that's going to give us a 5 out of 5 set with this team. Like I said, swapping Escav on the lead made a huge difference with this team. Okay, I feel like there'll be some questions about this lead, and that's going to be Poliwrath, because Poliwrath, although not distinctly strong against anything on our team, isn't weak either to anything on our team. It's very, very versatile with Counter, Icy Wind now, Scald. Like, it's primed to be one of the best Pokemon really in Ultra League currently, I would say. Really only having to worry about like Fairies, Cresselias, stuff like that. Normally, I like to stay in with Escavalier and play the matchup out. Because they built up so much energy and hadn't thrown, I took a chance at catching a charge move because I expect them to throw Scald at Escav. So I took a chance at catching a move, which I didn't do, but then they ended up throwing anyway, and I think they're just wanting to debuff Suicune. I shielded the second move because honestly I was a bit worried about Dynamic Punch with them choosing to stay in. I was like, well, maybe they've got a charge move that's going to hit for neutral. And this matchup plays out weird because they just stay in. And I'm like, now they're committing shields into this match, but I'm like, are they really that weak to Suicune in the back where they don't have like a pivot, or they really want to line Escav up with something else? I'm like, have I really messed up here? And it turns out that I did make a pretty serious mistake by swapping in Suicune in this matchup, because if I remember rightly, there's 2 fire types in the back. So Suicune would have had an absolute field day once we got past the Poliwrath. And here's the first one of them, Charizard, right? So we got to do some manoeuvring because Escav is just going to have a bad time here. I think we end up swapping it in actually to see what they do. They actually bring in Skeledirge. We go and get a draw run off, which is going to do big damage but not KO. And we make another mistake, bring in Giratina, and we're like, maybe Dragon Claw will take it out. It doesn't. We should have just thrown the Shadow Sneak to KO, and then maybe we'd have had a shot, but we don't. We fail the KO, we no shield, and we just get taken out because we know the Charizard has energy as well. It's a GG. What's next on the lineup for us? That's right, Venusaur. Now, this isn't the only Venusaur I saw with this team. It seems to have picked up a little bit in popularity this season around. Not super sure why. I mean, it's strong, but you just don't often see it. And especially with the being a buff to Ice and Incinerate, I was surprised to see Venusaur. I suppose it's there to try and catch the Poliwraths, really. But Escavalier loves to see it. You know, you're double resisting all the moves. You've got Aerial Ace as well to do big damage. They pivot out into Obstacle, which is not a good pivot to Escav. So we just stop in, counter down, and now we're going to pivot for whatever they bring in. We're going to try and catch a Hydro Cannon, which we do. Fantastic. We've got a ton of energy loaded on Escav, ready to dump into that Venusaur or even the Swampert, depending on how this goes now. We're in a pretty strong position. We're just going to stay in this matchup now, start throwing some charge moves at this Swampert. There's a good chance. We expected that they might stop in with Swampert, which is why we wanted to try and catch a Hydro Cannon just so we weren't as quickly pressured into shielding a potential Earthquake. But it's not really a big stress. They managed to CMP Tires, which is a little bit annoying when we built up such a random... We tried to throw it at kind of a random time, but doesn't matter. We're going to undercharge it. The Venusaur's not really got too much it can do here because we're just going to spam Aerial Aces. We've got quite a bit of health on Giratina, which they're going to have to throw quite a bit of energy at to take out. And then Suicune can survive a Frenzy Plant as well. So what we're going to do is actually swap Suicune in aggressively, just tempts them to do something with it, and they don't. They just stop tapping. I'm assuming they might have closed their app. Yeah, we got the long pause on the charge move throw, so they've closed their app, disconnected or something. Doesn't matter. The game was ours anyway. Even down a shield, not much they can do. So we're just going to snarl them down, take that win. GG. If nothing else, that gives you guys an idea on just how much punishment Venusaur can take from Suicune, like one Ice Beam and a ton of Snarls to take it out. Charizard lead, awful. Flip to Giratina, run as fast as we can, get away from that thing. Greninja comes in to meet us. Also, not brilliant. We would like to get switch advantage in this situation if we can, which would be easier if we had Dragon Breath rather than Dragon Claw. They don't get the boost on the first Night Slash, which really would cement us not getting switch advantage here, but we can survive one more Night Slash. So there's a chance here because they're letting these moves through. They're getting quite low before they start committing shields. We'll let this go, see what it is. Another Night Slash, that's fine. They're going to struggle to farm us down. I think they get a little bit cocky about how much energy we had there, and we actually get 2 shields out of them. Now we let this go because I think they can just Water Shuriken us down either way, and we're going to take 2 shield advantage for Suicune, and can it just sweep the rest of the game? Charizard comes in, we swap to Suicune, and there's Cresselia. Right, how does this matchup go with 2 shield advantage? I'm going to shield up right away, shield up the first move because it's going to hit the hardest if we're debuffing them. Then we're going to make sure we're throwing optimistically. We're not going to let them get 3 Psycho Cuts through because it's going to be quite a long matchup. Cresselia is quite bulky, a lot of charge moves going back and forth. So those extra Psycho Cuts, if you're not carefully timing your moves, are going to start adding up. We want the attack debuffs. Honestly, in this situation, we really want to start nerfing this Cresselia so these Grass Knots aren't going to hit as hard. We need to make sure it's not going to do as much damage. Getting them pretty low at this point. They're possibly in Snarl down range, which is quite interesting because then we could definitely throw a Scald at the Charizard. They realise this, they try and swap in aggressively. Even if this is Blast Burn, it shouldn't quite take us out. It's Blast Burn, we survive. This is going to get them very low, if not KO them. Then we should be able to counter down with Escav and just finish off the Cresselia as well. Going to be a little bit close. We don't even throw the energy. Don't gamble with the Charizard getting to a potential Blast Burn. It does get there quick. Take it out. And the game is as good as done because Cresselia cannot hack Escav with that much health. Okay, straight from a horrific lead into a pretty good one. Steelix. This is... I mean, actually, the only Pokemon that doesn't really want to see this thing is Giratina. Escav has the best matchup because, you know, you're resisting the Dragon Tails, you're resisting the breaking swipes. They're only really threatening you if they go all the way to an Earthquake, by which point you're spamming counters and draw runs. So, and Suicune does well with the Scold and the debuffing and whatnot, and it's quite bulky to take the Dragon Tails and the Dragon, the Breaking Swipes, even though it's not resisting. So as long as we keep Giratina away from it, we're looking pretty good. And then even having Shadow Claw means that Giratina isn't useless against it. So this team does quite well against Steelix overall. We're going to choose to pivot because we were massively debuffed. They brought Drapion in to meet our Escav, which I found really surprising. Even though we're debuffed, we've got counter, we've got drill run, we're resisting like the fast moves. Seems like a weird choice. But we pivot to Giratina kind of blindly, and we get Heliosk. Is it Heliosk? Lined up with this thing. We're just going to let Giratina go. At this point, we're just here to spam Dragon Claws, make them throw energy. Or just take out the Heliosk, even though with Shadow Claw, the opponent surrenders. They don't even see Suicune, but we would have gone in with Suicune after that, debuffed them, then brought in Escav for the counter down. Okay, Ampharos. Neutral lead, good because it's not on Suicune. Quite a lot of the leads are situations like this, where it's something that either Giratina or Suicune definitely doesn't want to see, and you can just line things up differently. So, they pivot out into Charizard before they throw any energy. We're just going to bring in Suicune, we can take whatever move they want to throw at us. It is the Dragon Claw. The Blast Burn does hit Suicune harder, but it doesn't do 50%. So either way, they're having to spam charge moves at you to take you out. We get a debuff. We're still not pressured to match shields. We're still going to get another Scold off. And then, if they shield that, then we should shield it. But we don't shield this, because look at this. It's not going to get us that low. And we can still get to 2 more. We'll get to this Scold, and we'll get to another one if they do shield this up. So we're looking very, very strong. We take Charizard out. They've got minimal farm. We might get a Scold off on this Ampharos. We're just going to get there. Absolutely perfect for us. They're going to get minimal farm. They are at a lot of energy, though, at this point. So a Focus Blast would hit pretty hard. Escav wins CMP tie, so we can throw this first, force a shield if they want to keep that energy. And let's see what they've got in the back. They actually catch on their Escav, which can't... We're pretty much doing... We didn't have a hard counter lead, but their 2 Pokemon in the back, we had 2 pretty hard answers for. So I believe the opponent's going to surrender there, and it's going to be a good game. Now, I do have a ton more matchups with this team that I could show you guys, but I don't want to be spamming you up all day. I don't want it to be like an hour-long video, and a lot of them are the same kind of matchups, the same leads and stuff, and the same ways they play out. So there's a couple of interesting matches I want to talk about before I leave you guys to it. And the first one is this matchup with the Charizard lead with Sacewalk Giratina, and it's pretty immediately matched with a Togekiss counter swap. This sounds pretty dire, right? Like, we've lost this game because we can't win switch advantage against Togekiss, and Charizard will decimate Escavalier, and they'll probably have a hard water answer in the back with having Charizard on the lead. But Giratina's appalling. It's insanely strong, especially with Shadow Claw. Look at this, though. They must be a bit optimistic or a bit cocky, and they let 2 Shadow Sneaks through. And then we see MP tie here. So if they don't shield up, this will KO, and we'll get switch. And then they do shield up, but our Shadow Claw's faster than Charm, so we take them out. So in the one shield situation, we win switch against a Togekiss with no farm left. So now we've got Suicune lined up with Charizard and Escav left for whatever's in the back, which it turns out is a Cresselia. So Giratina really flipping that match around for us. And of course, the Togekiss could have shielded up a Shadow Sneak. It's kind of surprising they didn't shield at all, because we could have had Ancient Power as well, and that would hit harder than Shadow Sneak. So the fact that they chose not to shield at all, a little surprising. Maybe they thought the second Shadow Sneak was a Dragon Claw. But as long as you throw well, like you time your charge move throw so they don't sneak any charms through, you're going to be looking pretty good in that matchup, because like I say, you can get shield advantage, and in our case, we actually managed to go even shields and take switch advantage as well, which was everything that we needed in this game, because we were hard counter city, and we managed to turn it around to being hard counter city the other way, and that's going to be a GG. Okay, bit of an unusual one these days, next lead, but it used to be very prominent in the Ultra League. That's Articuno. And Articuno, you think, well, you've got a Steel type, Escavalier. This is surely like a hard win, and you just shield if they build it to a Hurricane or whatever. But Ancient Power did get rebuffed, a few seasons back. And it's not bad. Like, look at this damage that it does to Escav. So this matchup isn't really a hard win for Escavalier like you would expect it to be. It's actually quite close. We do just take it. Like, we know this is another Icy Wind, so we just let it go. It's not quite going to KO, and we should get the counter down. So you've seen the Zero Shield, though. We pretty much... It's very, very close. So I thought that was worth taking note of there. Jellicent comes to follow in, and we're just going to line up Giratina with that, and there's Obstagoon in the back. And I think this is an interesting matchup because we haven't seen Suicune v Obstagoon yet in this video, so I thought it's worth including just so you guys can see how it plays out. And this opponent plays it quite well because they do, you see we're getting the debuffs with the Scalds, and they end up saving energy and pivoting out to then re-throw that energy later on when the debuffs are cleared, because they can swap back out to Jellicent, which is a good play. It's the right way to go about this matchup, I think, if the opponent is getting lucky with you and you're getting debuffed, is try and get the energy, pivot out, and then come back in to make the energy more threatening again. I don't know if they're trying to catch on Jellicent, but they do want to clear those debuffs anyway. They're not able to catch a Scald, though, if that is what they were going for. And now we're not bothered about shielding Giratina at all, because we know Suicune's the win condition. Giratina is going to struggle against that Obstagoon, so it's going to go for a Shadow Sneak, get the chip damage on the Jelly, get it nice and low. This isn't Shadow Ball, it still won't KO, and the Obstagoon will probably have to throw energy because double resisted non-stab counters are going to add up a little bit slowly. They are low, we've got energy, so we're going to be kind of threatening here. We want them to throw at least one charge move, they do. We let it go, of course, and then we save the shield for Suicune. We get to this last Scald, and it should be enough to KO. So Suicune isn't just going to win its positive matchups, it's quite strong in neutral matchups as well. That's the difference that Scald makes. It makes it not just a water type, it makes it a viable Ultra League Pokemon in general. Okay, one last battle, and that's going to be Giratina lead. Turns out this is a Dragon Breath Giratina, which is a lot better for Escav, but we blindly swap into Suicune. I recommend you say swap Suicune against Giratinas. And they bring in Snorlax. So it's a very neutral energy, neutral health. Like, we just swapped in Suicune, they swap in Snorlax pretty much immediately. And we should have a Body Slam because we're like, you know what, we want to get debuff off on them before we start taking any charge moves. And it's not super necessary, as it turns out. You're going to see we don't get the debuff here again, and they're just going to keep going for Body Slam spam. The licks aren't really adding up, but those Scalds are, like, we can take 3 Body Slams, not debuffed, but they can't take 3 Scalds. So we're actually in an advantageous position here, able to take Switch against Snorlax. If we'd have taken an extra Body Slam worth of energy, we'd still be fine there. But this means we're going to get to an Ice Beam against this Venusaur that follows it in. No idea why they didn't bring Venusaur into Suicune when we swapped it in. That would have definitely put the opponent in a better position, because they knew we had Escav. So they definitely wanted to keep Venusaur away from that thing as well. Might have been a mispress by the opponent, in all honesty, but it is our situation to take advantage of. But I just wanted to show that Suicune on Snorlax, pretty good matchup. Like, Suicune can hang on its own in there, even without Scald debuffs. And yeah, we went down a shield, but we didn't need to. We'd have survived the other Body Slam, is the main point there. And yeah, I mean, it got us away from a Dragon Breath Giratina, which isn't the worst for Escav, which still gives it some pivot room in this end game as well. If this was a Shadow Claw and Shadow Sneak Giratina, we might have been looking a little bit scarier at this point right now. But with it just being Dragon Breath, we're not super stressed. Build up extra energy since the fast move isn't giving us that much pressure. Means we've definitely got at least like an Aerial Ace to throw at the Venusaur, maybe a little bit more than that, because one Aerial Ace might not KO him at this health range because they're not Shadow. We can still survive a charge move probably here as well, because they are double resisted. Frenzy Plant's hard hitting, Venusaur hits hard, but I think we can survive 2 charge moves. We don't need, not 2, sorry, but 1 more fast move at that health. We don't need to get 2 Aerial Ace, take them out, take the win. So yeah, guys, that's the team, that's Suicune. And I know you might be thinking, well, do we really need to be talking about Suicune when we've got such strong water picks like Swampert, Greninja, Poliwrath, Tapu Fini in the Ultra League? And I think we do need to have a conversation about it, because it's a better answer to Talonflame and Charizard than Poliwrath is, because you're not weak to the wing attacks. Like, you can very comfortably win that matchup. It's better against Nidoqueen than Tapu Fini is, and better than Poliwrath is. Like, it doesn't have to worry as much. Like, it doesn't get really heavily threatened by like Moonblast from Cresselia like Greninja does. So if you're looking for something that's a bit outside the box that might throw some opponents off, and if you're just seeing the same 5 or 6 Pokemon going around, maybe Suicune fits into your team better than some of those would against what you're running into. Let me know what you guys think down below about Suicune. If you got any questions about the team, maybe like some common lineups that you're running into a few times, you're not sure how to handle them, I'll try and answer any questions that you've got if I can. I hope you're having a good season so far. I know I'm only like a week and a half in. I should be getting my ELO in the next day or 2, maybe tomorrow. Hopefully it's not absolute trash, but honestly, I've kind of messed about with a few teams over this last week and a half and lost quite a few matches. Like this team with Suicune, I'm on like a 65-70% win rate with this team, which is amazing. But But overall, I think my win rate for this season so far is like 55%. So not amazingly positive, but positive all the same. So maybe we'll get a good start in Elo. Who knows? Anyway, I'll stop rambling. Thank you so much for watching. You're all absolute legends, and I will catch you guys next time.